And it's going now.
Oh,
Hey, all
right.
right, guys. It's virtual brown bag time. It's May 24th. So what we do here is just a collection of developers, and we talk about whatever's interesting to us in terms of tips, tricks, new frameworks, new code. Sometimes we have a guest speakers that come in to share, and a lot of times we're just sharing things that we found out in the week. The heart of it and the origin was back in the day. Claudio and I were part of a Houston Code Camp, and we loved the open spaces format and discussion. And we wanted to carry over that type of engagement, especially for people who are increasingly now. Back then, it was sort of rare. You had a couple people that worked by themselves, but now a lot of people are remote. All those conversations that you have around the water cooler about, hey, did you read this blog post? Or hey, have you seen this? Or I was hacking on this last night. When you're by yourself and remote, like you don't have those conversations. And this is a forum for at least once a week. You can get exposed to new ideas, new things, new blog posts and stuff that you can learn so much just by someone just mentioning something, and it keeps you informed and make sure you're doing the best you can do and working on the best stuff. So, yeah, without further ado, Claudia, miss anything? Seem good? Good coverage?
That's it, man. Good stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Claudio's my hero
Yeah.
because he can
Just
play
because I
guitar.
talk funny.
Yeah. Hey, not everybody here has a fan site. Okay, only one person has fan site with fan art.
Man, it's amazing that that fan site is still up and running. It's so weird and bizarre.
Please link to the fan site in the chat.
Yeah, Claudia
Yeah,
would have it.
I'll look it up here. It's ridiculous.
Well, I'm going to start off
And
with some
yeah.
stuff, and we're going to eventually move into probably talking a little more about like Unity and some game programming stuff. We mentioned it last week, and so I thought we'd keep dive a little more into it. But I wanted to cover some things that I discovered along the week that I wrote down as notes to be like, hey, share this stuff. So, Caleb is a good friend he was originally in Houston, now he lives in Austin. He did some, when the Houston JS started that up, got to know him well. And he did an overview of Space City JS. So, remember last week I sort of blew through it off the top of my head. Well, Caleb was actually able to sit down and take awesome notes. So with this side, he actually covers each of the talks and gives the bullet points of what the talks are about and offers links and so forth. So if you're interested in some of the topics and stuff that came in there, this would obviously have a lot better discussion of interesting things and quality of notes than me as I was running around vaguely remembering what they said from a couple of slides. What I also discovered last week is the site called Flexiboxes. Flexbox is a display style inside browsers for CSS, and I'm just beginning to get pretty good with it. But generally, what I had to use was I think let me Google see the site I normally use. CSS tricks is what I yeah. So I normally use this CSS tricks, and I sort of figure out like, okay, this is what this property does, and then I hack on things and eventually get it to work. What Flexibox does is allows you to you'd see the properties here and adjust and see what happens. So you can be like, oh hey, let me select 3 or whatever, and hang on, see. You can see each of them have the as I adjust how they get displayed and then the order they're put into. Um, Obviously, you can see how I adjust all this stuff. I'm by no means a Flexbox expert, so this is very helpful to just play around and see if I can get this set up right the way I want to, and then just copy the CSS over and apply it to my project. So if you're like me and just still learning how to do CSS Flex, this is the way to do it. And from what I understand, this is also the way that React Native does it. And so this is a way you can learn that as well. Let's see. Also learned this week, for whatever reason, I never had to rename a branch. Um, Mostly because I'd just be lazy. So if I had a typo or something, I was just like, whatever. Well, actually, I probably would create another branch with it not make
Well,
it.
I think you can use MV too.
Yeah, because it's move. I guess M and MV, we both.
Yeah, you can like get branch move old new.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, hey, cool. Now I'm sorry, I don't have an excuse if my branch had a bad name. I probably should just change it. I also cover in a blog post discussing ways you can key Elixir maps, and the reason why I did this is because it can be kind of tricky when teaching Elixir maps because the difference between an atom and a string. It's sort of like Ruby, but there's a little gotcha inside here, and that is this guy right here. That although it looks like it's a string, because you think, oh, this is a string key. No, it's not. It's still an atom, which means that you can set up a map this way and then access it that way, and or you set it up this way and you can access it that way. And so the confusing part really is you set up the map this way and you think, oh, this is a string, and you try accessing it that way and you get this no match error, and you're like, what? What's going on? And that's because this is a string and this is an atom. And so obviously the reverse is true. So if using a string as a key, when you set the string, you can access it. But if you try doing it like an atom, you're going to get your match errors.
Can you convert the string to a atom though?
Yes.
When you're looking at the key.
Yes.
Cool.
The hesitation there, or what you probably want to do is, I also learned this week, and I do a blog post discussing it, is that atoms are, and I can't remember how Ruby does garbage collection on them, but with Elixir, they are not garbage collected, period. So generally the rule of thumb is you use strings for outside input of data, and then you can use atoms for fixed amounts and understood internals. But I was like, oh, I did not know that. And they're like, yes, you will create memory problems if you're just like atom all the things. But obviously here with Elixir, kind of cool. Like you can make anything a key. So make it a number. You can make it a tuple. You can use a list. And then you can also do another map. And the syntax is a little bit weird, but yeah, it totally works. And so I was just like, hey, that's kind of cool. You know, you can put all the things inside there. And let's see a couple other things to share. This another one is piping into an anonymous function. So pipe operator is really cool with Elixir, that when you take the number, or you take whatever's on the left-hand side, you put that as a first parameter into the function on the right-hand side. So sometimes you're like, oh, I really need this anonymous function, and you think, oh yeah, I'll just do this, and it'll work. And no, it doesn't, because it's going to give you this error. And once you understand why, like, if you back up for a bit and take a look at this and say, hey, okay, if I have a reference to this anonymous function, how do I execute it? Well, you do dot, and then the parentheses. You invoke it that way. Remember, Kevin had that thing, the little whiplash thing, invoke it. Well, so, okay, that's cool. That makes sense. What if we replace the F with what our reference is? Okay, so we wrap around parentheses and we invoke it there. Okay, that makes sense. Now let's go back to our pipe operator, and now it makes more sense that what you actually have to do is wrap the anonymous function, parentheses, and then invoke it, but you don't pass anything because 3 is going to be passed in as the first parameter. So when you first run into it, you're like, what? But then once you see it, it makes perfect sense. And I think the general rule of thumb is, yes, you can do this, but don't do this, like make a name function, because that's more of an Elixir way of doing it. And plus the pipe operator beauty is pipe operators, you can put those together and then you get that not fluent interface per se, but it's more readable. And so if you have that pipe operator with all these awesome functions and you run into this gobbledygook, it's like you sort of failed. And then this dumb one, how do you reset the Meteor database? You just do that. It seems obvious at first, but I never really did it, and I had to figure it out. Anyway, that was my sharing of all my stuff. Anyone have any links or blog posts of interest that they've run across this week?
I just posted the stupid link to that fan site. That ridiculous piece of work.
Tripod, even back in the day. See. Fan forever. Oh, the art is cool. Pictures, audio. There we go.
Yeah, and the captions are, oh my god.
Yeah, good time.
Yeah. Yeah, look at the caption on that first one. It's like, oh, Claudio's not happy, but we know you're happy, or something like that. Like, what the hell?
This is good times. Good times.
And the fan art is just, oh my God.
Yeah.
Somebody actually took the time to do that.
You know who made this, Claudio? Someone you
I
know?
have absolutely no idea. You see, that was back in 2008. I don't even remember how I found that. And then I was like, man, no way. Those are my pictures. Somebody actually drew me. And then there's like a forum and people saying that, they want to, get married to me, but, whatever. Claudio is never going to accept. And then somebody else saying, no, he is good. He'll say yes. It's like, what the hell is this? That's so bizarre.
It's also
I've
looking at
never
comments.
known.
So Nick
Yeah.
had a question about whether using Phoenix for a client project, and so yes, not right now, but I've used it for the last two, and going forward, that's what I'm gonna be using. Period. I mean, I might pick up Rails work, but the performance difference is so significant that it's hard for me to justify going to Rails. I love Rails and Ruby by themselves, but um, with the option of Elixir and Phoenix, it just it makes sense for me. But that being said, I just use Phoenix for APIs. I haven't built an app or deployed an app where that's like where else we have the web page and like they have the option it can generate HTML, but I haven't deployed it that way. And I guess I could, but I feel a strong point as its APIs as an API server. And yeah, so production, yeah, it was got 1.0 in August, and yeah, I've used it a lot in production and no problem. Even the socket communication stuff was awesome. I mean, when I switched over Sports TradeX to that, we did a test and we had it all set up on staging, and I was like, we did a couple of football weekends, and I was like, all right, it's good staging. We haven't had a problem. Let me go turn it on production. Then I was like, oh, it's already on in production, and we haven't had any problems. So it was good. It was a good switch for us because we dropped our $400 plus a month pusher bill to 0, and no problems.
What was that bill coming from?
Pusher. It does. So let's see if we could pull that link up there. Pusher. So yeah, they do push notifications. So if you look at pricing, we'll see what the pricing is these days. Yeah, like we were up into these areas. Like ours was $400 a month, so maybe they changed some of the stuff. But yeah, we regularly were hitting the how many messages a day.
And so switching the architecture helped with.
Yeah, it was a switch on Phoenix and dropped that bill to nothing and had no problem. So you have to take a look here that we were up to, I guess, more than I did that double check because you have to change the prices, but like 10 million messages a day. It was fine. Yeah, I don't remember. I never did a specific.
I'm trying to follow the switch to Phoenix for push notification.
Mm-hmm.
When you switched over to Phoenix, your server was faster, so you didn't need a third party to do push notification.
No, Rails does not have socket communication built in.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
So I explored Faye, and then I explored. It was before Action Cable.
Those were sockets specifically. Okay. Cool.
So Faye is one of the things I explored, and you can tie it in with Ruby. But I didn't really care for how I had to tie it into Ruby. I also tried Socket.io. And while it itself isn't bad, I felt the documentation with Socket.io was really bad and confusing. And it was been weird because I would have to have somehow Ruby would have to talk to Socket.io and all that jazz.
Yeah, I've played around with Socket.io just in tutorials, and the documentation is a little confusing. I mean, it worked. Well, not like that. Like it worked, but they don't. You kind of have to reread stuff a few times to figure out how it works.
Yeah.
What's weird that has made the switch made such a big difference?
Yeah,
and you also had it where like our Rails server was taking up like 250 plus meg memory. We had to like do the double dynos, and the Phoenix server when I switched over, and so it was like 250 plus megabyte memory, megs of memory, and like the response times would average between it was around 100 to 200 milliseconds because the post would take a little while, and refactored the post as much as I could. It was just like, look, it's going to take this long. Nothing else I could do. The reads are around 30 to 50 milliseconds, but then the Phoenix side, the server memory went down to like between 30 and 50 megs, easy, pretty. It was just like steady, no problem. And response times are always between 30 and 50 milliseconds. Like it wasn't, there was even the posts were not slow at all. Like there was no slowness. It was just like wicked fast, done. So I had this Phoenix server that was a smaller memory footprint. I didn't need as many dynos. Like also, I did 2, even though I only needed 1 because I wanted Heroku to stay alive and get some other stats. Low memory footprint, wicked fast response times, handled all the socket communication for me, and so it was just nothing but win for me. That's why I do it going forward. And really, for the perspective is like I like the Phoenix framework. I get everything that I enjoy from Rails inside there. Awesome testing, great active record-based ORM type stuff. The tests were fast, so it was nothing but awesomeness from my point. Plus, Elixir I think has a lot of cool features. Yeah, so I got sidetracked there, but so to answer the question, Nick, I assume so. Yeah. Okay. No problem. All right. So I guess also like I guess on the subject of Elixir, let me share one thing quick, and then I know Anthony was sharing some stuff with Ben and me this morning on his gaming he's doing with Electron and JavaScript. So I'll hand it over to him to start sharing. But let me show one thing with Elixir that I've been working on that's been pretty cool. So let me see if I can share this page. Where are you? And stop that, but then I will share. Hey. Cool. So let me pull that up so I can see what y'all see. The infinities. So I was going to show, I'm doing a lot of content on using XUnit, the testing framework for Elixir, and one of the neat features it has is tagging and also documentation in terms of testing. So I want to show a little bit of both. So project mix new, go to FizzBuzz, and then take a look at a test. We all know that, hey, for FizzBuzz, one should return 1. Because actually, okay, so FizzBuzz, for those who don't know, is a classic developer interview problem where given a number, if it's divisible by 3, it should return fizz. If it's divisible by 5, it should return buzz. If it's divisible by 3 and 5, it should return FizzBuzz. And everything else would just return the number. So if we did pass in 1, we should assert that 1 is equal to 1. 1 is equal to 1 message. So we see that, hey, we don't have that function, so there, and we get that to pass. So if we have 3, it should return fizz. So here we'll just do a little test here. What we can do is rim is basically the modulo operator or function for Elixir. So we say, hey, 3, that should be equal to 0. And we can say, if fizz is true, then we'll return is, otherwise we'll return the number. Cool. And now if we do 5, we'll get a failing test. So we can do it another one here and say, hey, buzz is 5. It's true, return buzz, number. And of course, we need to have it where if it's 15, we should return fizzbuzz. It should fail. And we'll just refactor this guy out and say, hey, make this a tuple, and then we'll do some pattern matching on it. We'll say, hey, if this is true and true, then we'll return fizzbuzz. Otherwise, if fizz is true, we don't care about the second value because it's already been matched. Buzz, otherwise return that number. So if fizz and buzz are both true, we're going to return fizzbuzz. Then obviously this would be false, but I'm just keeping it blank, and then this potentially could be false. It would be false, and so we get fizz and buzz. All right, so that's pretty straightforward. There's nothing different in terms of using XUnit for this. But what we can do here is we can introduce tags. So I can tag this with fizz. I can tag this with buzz. I can tag this with fizz. And I can also tag it with buzz. So now when I run my tests, if I only want to look at fizz tests, I say only fizz. And this time it will only run the tests that have been tagged with fizz. Same thing I can do with buzz.
That's cool.
You can also do exclude. So I want to exclude all my buzz tests, and it will tell you which ones is excluding. So this is helpful, say, if you want to mark a test as pending instead of fizz and buzz, mark it as pending. So here we can just do tag pending, and you can just say, wait here.
I like that that's all customizable instead of like the test framework saying, we have a pending tag you can use. You just do whatever you want, and you can have your own tags or whatever makes sense for you.
I think this is the syntax. Wait,
oh, that's cool.
You can do this.
Yeah.
You can actually configure it so that when you're on mixed tests, you automatically exclude these ones. So you can mark with pending, and you can mark as slow. Because like you say, Anthony, like normally it's built in, but here's like it's all completely customizable. And the same thing was, let's say you had the test file and there was 50, 100 million tests, and you're like, look, I just want to run this one test. You could say focus. You could say, because that's the one test you're working on, and that'll be the only one that runs. So you have exclude, you have include, and you have only. So I have not been using tags in my tests, but based on the stuff I was learning, I'm like, that was a mistake. Like, because you had tags back in Cucumber and RSpec, but I don't know, I used some of them, but never really paid a lot of dividends. But this, I could see, I was like, okay, this is going to pay a lot of dividends if you start tagging these things appropriately. I was using folder structure more to organize my stuff, but this is another way of doing that sort of test. The other part here is with, if you notice here, it says doc tests. And like, what's doc test? So what Elixir allows you to do is in your documentation, you can actually have code that it runs tests against. So you can say, hey, I'm on documentation, so I can say, for a given number, if it is divisible. Return viz wise number. Cool, this is documents and stuff, but then you can say and go when you do fizzbuzz.get message and you pass in 1, it should return a 1. When you do 3, you should get fizz. When you do 5, buzz. 15 should be buzz. All right, so here we'll just comment all these tests out because we can. Notice here that what? There's no test, but we got one test passing. And just to show that it works, buzz tells you, hey, we failed at this documentation, at this doc test. You called this, and it got that. And you can check here and change it back. But to me, that's pretty cool. And highly encourages where the problem with documentation always, to me, was that it can get stale and old. And so this upper part is for humans, but then this bottom part is nice because it's for the computer. And while the tests, we'll always view tests as documenting your code, now it's, the merge is even more. That now it like the code documentation is running the test and double check that it does work as expected.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's always been sort of passion and interest of people saying, hey, this is really should how it work. And I think Python has some of this stuff, I'm going to say. This is my first real language I'm diving into that has it built in. And I think it's part of the nature and community around Elixir and sort of the idea that Ruby was always really strong and Rails was always strong with testing because that was just part of their culture. I think part of the culture that I've been noticing out with Elixir is code documentation, because so Ruby and Rails, their projects, they always, in GitHub, always has great READMEs. You open up a project for a Ruby situation, and their code is like the README is going to tell you everything you need to know. JavaScript Node, they generally do a better job of having documentation pages. That's so like a custom page that's all they do. For that, and here actually let me share that because I think it's better to illustrate it. So let me share just that screen. So let's take a look at as a Ruby gem. A good Ruby gem, I say devise. So devise will have a very long, README. It will discuss how you install, how you get it to work, and everything you're going to run into. That's what the Ruby culture and style is. I would say for JavaScript, the best example for that type of stuff would be Moment.js. So if you look at Moment, look, it's a complete separate site. They have a very extensive documentation on, hey, when you go here, this is what you're going to see and do, and that's just the JavaScript way. For Elixir, let me pull up. Their documentation, their code can generate documentation from using hex, and so that is what you're going to see here. Is that okay? They have a very big description on what this code is documented and how it works. But the thing with this is that, let's take a look at something like, say, transactions. If you go here, this is actually from the documentation in the code itself. So that's the culture from Elixir, is you put the documentation for the library inside the code itself, and then Hex will generate the online version of that. And so I think that's part of their culture, and that's why the test is interesting, but it also sort of encourages us from the perspective that we should document our code and our functions, and I want to explore that next as running Hex to generate my own documentation too, and seeing how that turns out, because that could be really helpful and useful tool for bringing on other people into the library and sharing how the system works. There. Me gabbing on about Elixir. That's basically what I do these days.
That sounds interesting, though.
Yeah. All right, so Anthony, you want to share some of your Electron work? And you have Quantum Pilot, but I forgot what the other name of the game was.
The Combo Rockets.
Combo Rockets. Okay, that was it.
There's an older version on Congregate. I'm not happy with the code base, so I've kind of pushed off to the side right now. Yeah, so yeah, I'll share my screen just 1 second. Just setting up. So yeah, I've been writing games in JavaScript because I like JavaScript, and secondly, I really like the idea of cross-platform. And doing so much iOS development, it's kind of painful. I've done some Android too, and it's just really kind of bugged me as I'm writing iOS apps and I'm writing Android apps. Like, wow, this stuff only works on native platforms. That's kind of annoying. Let me just.
You could be doing it in WPF, and then it only sort of works on Windows sometimes. No joke. Nothing is as bad as WinForms.
Okay, let me find the share screen button. Green one, right? Yeah. Entire screen. Yeah, so I've been writing code and JavaScript and running it in Electron, which is this really cool Pulpit GitHub. Yeah, build cross-platform desktop apps with JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. So it runs Chromium as a browser. Use npm to install it. And there's a really great, it's actually another library, but Electron Packager, which you can use to actually compile these. So, and if you check out, there's a sample app you can download, just like a Hello World. But what you do, can you still see my screen? I full screened my terminal. Okay.
Yeah.
So what I did is just to show you like the production workflow, is I put this line here. I copy everything from my working directory, my Quantum Pilot directory here, into output folder, and then I cd into it, and I run npm start. That's sort of how I play test it to just play on my computer. And then when I want to release it, I can just go to a output directory, and I can type Electron Packager, and that'll give me all the options, which is really nice, instead of just giving you an error. And so I can do Electron Quick Start, call it Quantum Pilot, and I want my architecture to be Darwin, which is for Mac. I think that will, platform, oops, Darwin. And it takes a few seconds, and it runs that. And so that just lets me make a Mac app. And now if I open that, you'll see that it dumped out this folder here, and then I have a binary here. That's a native Mac application. And if I run it, I get my game. So I really like this as a workflow. There's very little compiling, and it all happens from just one command I run instead of. I really hate having to wait for an IDE to the progress bar. I just like pressing enter and opening it up. I guess I'll show you my game here. Is my Xbox controller working? Maybe not. Try this again. There we go. Oh, I was showing this off. It doesn't normally start like this. Actually, let me reset this just to get a better idea.
So I'm noticing this is like ES6 type syntax. Does that come automatically with Electron, or is that your?
What's that?
Are you using like ES6 syntax?
I am.
Okay.
Yes, and that's so you just have to put U strict at the top of your files,
Okay.
your JavaScript files, and it'll work. You have to do that for certain browser implementations. I think Chrome. I think the new Chrome doesn't need U strict, but Firefox does. I think. So I just put it at the top, and you need it for Chromium. Yeah, I'll show you my game real quick. So it's just you move around your ship, and you kill the other ship, and then new ones spawn. And the trick is that they are copying what I did. So each one of those is a clone. I don't know.
You've been working on this for a while, and I love it.
Yeah, quite a long time. A lot of design iteration.
So what was so how do you record the movements?
Yeah, that's actually something I wanted to show off. So I'm really happy with how that worked out. So I have a script. Where is it? Script 2. Yeah. So I have a class called recorder, and it starts with an empty record, but you can also initialize it with a record. This is ignore that. I was JavaScript's pass by value and pass by reference was confusing me, so I made a note there to look this up. But ignoring that, I have a record, and I have a start at time index 0 and time direction 0, and let's say recording is true. So each turn, actually time direction should be 1. I think I'll restart. I changed it to 1. So each turn, each frame, the player ship calls imprint, and it passes a hash of actions, which gets pushed onto the record, and then it increments the time index. And I think I can show her that. Handle recording, this.recorder.imprint, turn log, and turn log has a movement X, movement Y, and are you firing, yes or no? Pretty simple.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not using delta time or anything because I thought that would be a little complicated dealing with playback and calculating, all right, what percentage of a frame were you moving over, whatever. I'm not going to care about that. It runs smoothly, and just go frame by frame. So that's how I'm recording everything. And then the playback, I have a record player class that extends the recorder, and it has a playback function. And all it does is each tick, it increments its time index by the current time direction, which will be +1 or -1. If it goes past the total number of actions recorded, then it flips around to face it going in the past, or it goes to the last item here on line 43, and then starts moving in the past.
So it'll go backwards.
It'll go backwards, yeah. And if it rewinds past index 0, then it goes to index 0 and it starts going forward again.
Okay.
And then it returns this.record at whatever time index. So that, from what we saw earlier, that's just a dictionary of actions. I call it turn log. So it's a really simple class. This is me experimenting with some stuff not used. So where this gets used is I have a clone class which derives from the Qualm Pilot, the player class. And if I go to my loop, I call actions as I say, hey, record player playback. I validate that it's there, and then what I do is I'm actually it moves in the same x direction. So the movement x will be the x direction of that actions dictionary times what direction you're going in. So if you move right, if you just moved all the way to the right and we're shooting, when you rewind, you should be going to the left. So that's why I multiply by the time direction there, which might be -1. And then this dot flip, I was experimenting with flipping the x direction. Right now it's the same. But for the y actions, I do the same thing except for -1. And this is because I want the ship to move forward and back, not up and down. So like when I move up, the enemy ship should move down because it's above me. It should move towards me.
Right.
And then this dot firing equals actions firing, and if firing is true and we're active, which is like being alive, then fire weapon. So actually pretty simple code, I think, for what can end up causing some like pretty advanced or complicated behavior.
Well, couldn't you check if you're active, like above that? Like, shouldn't your name be flying around if you're active?
Yes, you should, and I actually think that I think I might actually have this active check in my engine, but I pulled this in from another library that I wrote, so
okay, yeah,
I have this there. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Actually, I'll show you all my engine. This has been really helpful game programming to have an engine like Unity or Unreal or something if you want to do that kind of stuff. I built a, it's not too bad, it's a couple hundred lines of what I call my game, and it just has a canvas and a client, and it does a couple setup things. I have some functions for like, okay, install sounds. You're supposed to override the parse input. You're supposed to get a keyboard input looped in from a client. And then I have my game objects organized by groups. So I can add an item to a group with this add function. I can destroy things in a specific group, which destroy all the bullets that are out of bounds, for example. I have a function for checking if things out of bounds. I have a handle out of bounds default method, which just, hey, that thing's gone. And then I have so I was doing collision detection in a kind of roundabout way. I basically made a separate function that sort of acted like a controller for each kind of object, and it never really felt quite right. So this is a new thing I'm experimenting with. And I know this looks maybe like a lot of code, but I think it makes sense. So things I have them defined as knowing about other things. So in this case, like bullets know about ships. So then I get a kind of things that it knows about, and then I get which group it's looking at, like ships, from my game things. And then I loop through the group and say, what's the other thing we're looking at in that group? Now that I've got the other thing, I can ask my object if it cares about that other thing. It might not care about it. So, for example, it might only care about ships that are the enemy team. And then I see if it can interact with it, which is usually a collision function. I kind of wanted to have something abstracted here, but I realized that maybe different kinds of shapes would need different kinds of collision functions. So I just said, hey, I'll just have a generic message I can send, say, hey, can you do something with this? Mm-hmm. And then it does interact, which, like in the case of a bullet, might change the ship's living state to false. So I know it's kind of some nested for loops here, but this is all I need in my engine for defining if things can interact with each other, which I really like. So I can have, let me find it.
Knows about.
Yeah, this laser, it knows about the group of things called ships. It only cares if it has the target's the thing's team, or is like which side it's playing for, in its group of targets, and the thing is active, and the index is not the diff index. Yeah, it can't shoot itself. And then my can function is just, hey, does the polygon contain the point? So does this bullet, is it inside that ship vertexes right now? And then the does function says, hey, pass the hit message to the ship. So the ship will actually be responsible for like removing itself, and maybe it'll send a message to the game saying, hey, play an explosion, or hey, I was hit, and the game can explode and play sound, whatever. But I also want to destroy the bullet when it hits, so the bullet doesn't just keep going. So that's kind of how I do interactions between objects, and it's been really nice having a foundation for the system, because then it's really easy for me to just create new objects and throw them onto the game, and I don't really think about like how is it going to know, how do I tell it to move, because every one of my groups gets a loop message sent to it with delta time and the game object passed in. It gets its interactions looped, and it has a post tick, an after loop as well. And then I check out of bounds and see if I should destroy it. If I should destroy it, I push it onto an array. So I have all that handled on a base implementation. So I can focus on the gameplay, which is what I care about. So yeah, that's kind of what I've been doing.
How has this been for teaching you JavaScript?
What's that?
Like so back in the day, you didn't know a lot of JavaScript, but I know you've been doing more and more. How do you feel?
Yeah, it's been good. Actually, with the advent of ES6, I am a much bigger fan of it because I actually made this engine work with just functions, and it always felt really weird to me. And I like thinking in terms of objects. Just makes sense to me. So it's just really nice to work with. JavaScript's got its weirdness with like undefined and triple equals and stuff, but it works. I like it. And then for drawing things, I have this. I have a draw file, draw.js, which just says like, hey, I just override the prototype draw function, and here's a laser, here's a ship. And it's just, I could separate this out. I kind of like having all my drawing in one place, because I'm usually referencing code or looking at, have similar but different behavior. So it's kind of nice for that to work. Yeah, that's some JavaScript. Oh yeah, so I have, this is my base client, which does generate a canvas. And those probably shouldn't be magic numbers there, but oh well, probably a function call. But then what's cool is when I'm setting up a new game, I just override this method called install game, and I just create a new game in one line. In this case, I'm creating the title game, which kind of gives you the menu. And I really like doing this with all the setup already done.
So have you been using this, like Combo Rocket is a different game? Are you using the same classes inside there?
Yeah, I've actually sort of have merged stuff from Quantum Pilot to Combo Rocket, and then Combo Rocket back to Quantum Pilot, because I ended up learning how to do rotation in Combo Rockets, and the weapons in Quantum Pilot actually, if I can show you, they had like hard-coded X and Y movement values, which is really ugly. And now they actually have a rotation, so like this weapon sort of shoots diagonally off to the side, and so it gets the ship's rotation value, or theta, and it adds 10.2, and it subtracts 10.2, and shoots off to the side, which was neat. The only exception to that, I have a this one does sort of a sine wave pattern, and it was really, it's not a true sine wave. It kind of like goes, they spread out and it stays in a straight line, comes back in, and that got really annoying trying to make work with the fancy rotation system. So I have an idea. Like, I think I know how to do it now, but it was just easy to just keep it the old way and move on.
You should probably look into make your game engine and client and all that stuff into like a little node package or something. And so you can share it between both games, and that'll be a good validation that it works as intended.
Yeah, that would make a lot of sense.
Plus, it'd be good exercise of learning how to set that up and use it.
That would be cool.
Dog food.
I want to make a note. Dog food. No package.
Yeah.
Thanks, JB. Yeah. So Combo Rockets. This code's not cleaned up, but it does use the same game engine. I have a lot of functions like evaluate rocket collision here. This is I did find this this little $V is a vector library.
Hey.
Yeah. So it sort of, I used it for implementing inelastic collisions according to Wikipedia. So I could add ship velocity multiplied by the ship mass, and then add the rocket velocity multiplied by the rocket mass, and then I have a constant I can tweak, which is just 1. And then I have rockets hitting ships, and they go flying in different directions.
Did you change it from this morning, or just?
No, I had this.
Okay.
I actually forgot that I used the library. Yeah, you can see this code. I got a lot to clear up, and gamepad stuff as well. But yeah, it uses the same engine under the hood, which is just neat. Same kind of drawing. Yeah, and I got gamepad support working, and it's actually really painless, and I really like that. The HTML5 has.
Oh yeah, HTML5. Yeah, you mentioned that.
Yeah, it's so the only weird thing about it is that you have to press a button on your gamepad to register the controller, which means that you can't just scroll on a title screen with the D-pad or something. You have to press a button, and that's supposedly in there to prevent browser fingerprinting. Unfortunately, it's really annoying.
So I mean, you could just have a start menu or whatever, and just press X to start or whatever.
Yeah, that's what I have. I say press space, and then I say press, once you start the game, press fire on the gamepad. So if you kind of hold any button down, you'll start shooting, and then it works.
Okay.
But yeah, I get that from just navigator.getgamepads, and then they have these different axes on them, and they have buttons that can have a state of is pressed. I think I can look. Press maybe. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. This is me. It's the ship's firing if one of these buttons is pressed, and then this is for D-pad movement. So that's pretty neat. And I found a website you can use, HTML5gamepad.com, where come on, why is it not showing up? Try replugging my Xbox controller in. There we go. Yeah, so now you can see I've got actually the inputs registering, which is really cool. And something I found out is that the joysticks don't quite go to 1, or this one's actually resting at 0. The PS4 controller wasn't, so you have to account for that and do a little bit of interpolation. And I have, if you're pressing over 0.9, I figure you need to press all the way. Um, but yeah, it supports like multiple buttons being pressed, which is really cool.
That's a lot of buttons.
Yeah.
That's right. The Xbox, we had 4 buttons. I guess you can press down on the stick. Does that count?
Yep, that's button 10 and 11. Then you've got the 4 shoulder buttons there,
Yeah.
4 face buttons, shoulder, the 2 start and select buttons.
Huh.
Uh,
What are those?
D-pad. That's
Oh, D-pad. I didn't think about those. Yeah.
up, up and left, down left.
Yeah. Jeez.
Yeah, so that's really cool. I really like playing games with real control schemes.
Yeah, my brother's been big into that now lately. Like,
Yeah,
if he's gonna get a Steam game, he's like, better use a controller.
So if you're interested in the game, you can go to quanpod.me and you can download it off of itch. Pay what you want.
So I saw it this morning, but what is itch? Can you?
Yeah, itch is a DRM-free store for games. So anyone can post. So like Humble Bundle's been around, but they like curate and only do so many games per cycle. If you want to like sell a downloadable game, there's a few sites out there where you can put up a file for download, but they're not organized around selling games. It's just like you'd have to do your own screenshots and just file description, etc. But Itch, I really like Itch. Their code's all open source on GitHub, which is cool. You can kind of read what they're doing, or you can make your own store if you wanted. They give you this download now. I can name my price. Game is free, but developer lets you think what you want. You can tip if you want. You can say just taking downloads.
Yeah, so you're more into the indie game scene than I am with this stuff. But like, how do people feel about Steam early access and all that stuff?
So people really like Steam, and players and devs, and the reason is that Steam is kind of a benevolent benevolent dictatorship.
Yeah.
It works. Oh, one downside about Electron, there's a 40 megabyte minimum binary size, just because they're packaging a freaking web browser.
Yeah.
Which sucks, and the 64 bits are double that. Go figure. So I just compile for the 32-bit now. I can't explain that. But yeah, so Steam is great. They've got a very lively community. Early access is really cool, and I'm actually interested in launching on Steam as well and seeing how that goes. It seems like I've seen this echoed on a few different gaming forums that serious video gamers use Steam. Right? It's like that's kind of the go-to platform for where people play games now. I don't like that it's DRM. I don't like that I have to be online connected to a server to play. That really bothers me for a number of reasons. So yeah, I'd like to just put it out there, and if you want to download it, you can. I don't think Steam does pay what you want either. I think you have to set a price.
Yeah.
Itch, you can do pay what you want, and you can do you can choose how much Itch gets for sales too. If you want to give them more or less, you can adjust that. I think it's in the settings somewhere.
I was like getting called. It's 1:30 anyway. This stuff, dude. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thanks for letting me share.
I'm glad you learned a lot of JavaScript through that, because it's a good skill to have these days.
Yeah. If y'all want to download the game, all the source code's in there. If you want to look at it further, it's just open up the package and all the JavaScript's in there.
Cool. Awesome. All right. I'll let you get to answering that phone call. All right.
Cheers.
See y'all next week, and happy coding.